Villains. If they have a reason, you know they're a good antagonist. When you need to criticize an idea, what better way to do it than to align it with the bad guy? However, it's not enough to just make them evil and call it a day. That would demonize the idea, saying it's completely wrong. You need to have a method behind the madness, and that's what makes the villains of Far Cry 5 so great. Not all ideas are all bad, just as not all people are all bad. Now, that's not to say that the villains have some good in them, because they really don't. They're very terrible people. Like, oh gosh, this isn't okay. However, it's important to know the good of what they represent and the outcome that they're trying to get so that we can analyze how bad their methods can be. Far Cry 5 is set in a town named Hope County, Montana, that gets taken over by a doomsday cult called the Project at Eden's Gate. You are a junior deputy who came to arrest their leader, but all doesn't go as planned. Your friends are captured and you barely make it out of there with your life. Eden's Gate is led by the Seed family, John, Jacob, and Jingleheimer Schmidt. John, Jacob, Faith, and the head of the family, Joseph. But we don't give a shit about him. This video is about John, Jacob, and Faith. Each of them controls a part of the operations in the cult. For gameplay purposes, they are merely obstacles on your way to getting Joseph, the leader. However, they represent more than just branches of leadership. To support their role in the cult, they each have their own mindset and methods of how to make humanity better. In other words, humanism. Anyone who wants humanity to improve is following the ideology of humanism. Now, before you hit the comments over any of these issues, please remember that I am considering this purely as a mindset or an ideology. I am not going into any of the religious aspects. I am simply educating and exposing the problems that each viewset contains. Most of my views on humanism come from the book Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, a book I highly recommend. Also contains major spoilers for Far Cry 5. Humanism is usually split up into three main categories. Could these three categories possibly be referring to the three villains I mentioned earlier? Yes. So, who are these sinister siblings? What do they have to do with humanism? And how can this be a bad thing? Let's get into it, shall we? We'll first start with Jacob, the soldier, the wolf. Jacob is head of the military operations at Eden's Gate. Yes, you heard that right.
From Twilight?
I did mention the wolf earlier. Anyway, Jacob is the head of military operations at Eden's Gate. Yes, you heard that right. Military operations. In your new cult. In the middle of an American town. Not very inviting. Once an officer in the US Army during the Gulf War in Iraq, Jacob has seen and been through some shit. At one point, his aircraft was shot down, but he and his best friend survived the crash. They had to travel 200 kilometers, that's around 124 miles, to get to the nearest base. And that's a long way to go.
That's like from my house to Six Flags.
Would you travel on foot all the way to Six Flags?
No.
And that's a long way to go. And their rations were running low. So Jacob had to do what he had to do to survive. Can you guess what he did?
He ate his wolf friends.
No. No, he wasn't taming wolves at this point. No,
oh, he ate his best friend.
Yes. Jacob killed...
Wait, what?
Jacob killed his best friend and ate him.
I was joking! Why? They could have eaten dirt. Dirt got proteins and minerals in the dirt.
I don't
Maybe
think...
not protein, but like minerals that you could survive on. I mean, it probably hurt coming out the other way, but they got cacti, right? In the desert,
it would
cactuses.
Jacob killed his best friend and ate him. It's what kept him alive to reach the base. And from this trauma, a philosophy was born. Cull the herd. Jacob is a firm believer of survival of the fittest. Those who are weak must be culled by the strong. He sets up death trials where he brainwashes the citizens of Hope County into killing each other. Those who die are weak and unimportant. The strong live on and create a better tomorrow. Anywhere in his territory, you can hear it echoing from the speakers that people are being numbed by society, that we, as humans, have forgotten what it is to be strong, and very few truly know what the world's horrors are like. They don't know what it takes to survive. Jacob's sense of humanism is a very physical one, called evolutionary humanism. He believes that we must focus on building ourselves physically, that we can evolve into a better species by focusing on our quote-unquote best traits as a group. And the best way to do this is to get rid of the old, the weak, the lesser. If only the superior exists, then they will breed better people. This is effectively social Darwinism, but a hell of a lot worse. Humanity, as it currently is, and always has been, was made from evolution of other species. And like all other species, Jacob believes that we are due for an evolution ourselves. Now, some of you may have heard this kind of ideology before, from a certain man with a funny mustache. That's not to say that Jacob is a Nazi, followed Nazism, or even neo-Nazism. I don't like to throw that word around, as that kinda deflates what a Nazi is. However, the Nazis are just the easiest example of evolutionary humanism. The belief that some people are just lesser than others, and some people are better than others, and that the superior people must be the ones to cull the herd, remove the weak, and then breed new humans. Sort of like breeding two good horses to make a great one. I shouldn't even have to go into why this is incredibly flawed, but of course I will anyway. Evolutionary humanism is a very generalized belief system. Different people all value different characteristics. For example, Jacob heavily values the survivability, endurance, and fighting capability of a person. So that means that how good you are at those things determines how worthy you are of living, according to Jacob. No one person should be able to hold everyone's lives in their hands and just smashing the ones you don't care for. People aren't God. People are complicated. Everyone has some things that make them special. Even quote-unquote bad people have redeeming qualities. And do some people who have done extremely bad things deserve death? Well, that's debatable. But it is of no right of a meager human or group of humans to weigh everyone else's lives by criteria, and then control who dies. Next up, Faith Seed, the siren, the equalizer. Faith is the head of Bliss production at Eden's Gate. What is Bliss? Is it A, a band, B, propaganda, or C, Eden's Gate churches?
Oh, am I answering?
Yes.
Propaganda?
No, it's none of them.
Wait, what?
That's a trick question. It's actually drugs.
What?
It is mostly inspired by the real-life drug scopolamine, which is known as a truth serum.
You know what?
What?
I've heard of Bliss.
It's not a real thing.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's inspired by... what do you mean?
It was on this episode of Captain Planet, where...
I'm looking this up right now. No, I'm looking this up. Captain Planet Bliss. What?
It's hard moving to a new town. You want to be cool, but you don't fit in. But once you felt bliss, none of that will matter. Not so fast. This will cost you. Go on, get blissed out. Nothing can bring you down now.
Man, what went down on that street?
What went down, Wheeler, was people's self-respect. They no longer care about the neighborhood or themselves.
Oh my gosh, they stole it from Captain Planet. Which are often the probably hard to experience. These people do anything to take the... Oh my gosh. Dude! They stole it from Captain Planet! Oh my gosh! Ignorance is bliss. Bliss is aptly named because of its control on people. When you're under the influence of the bliss, you have less control over yourself, and it's usually perceived as you being in a fantasy land. You do not fully know what is truly happening to you, as you're just feeling bliss. There are enemies in the game who have been given too much bliss, and they are manic and violent. They do not act human anymore, but instead, they just seek to harm. They do not even realize that they are like this. They have been reduced to just being zombies. When you're under its influence, you feel happy, but you don't know what you are truly doing, who you're truly hurting. You can see it through one of your allies that Faith has captured, as he is slowly losing his mind. He is blissfully ignorant of what you had come to do in the first place. All he cares about is how it makes him feel. It's a great representation of the early stages of drug addiction. It can feel amazing, better than anything anyone has ever felt before, but it's not real happiness. Your ally, he's frustrated by his mundane life and the choices that he made for himself, and now that Faith has chosen the life for him, he feels free and so much better. He feels like his problems aren't there anymore, but it's melting his brain. His problems still exist, and he is just choosing to ignore them. He is sacrificing the future that he could have, whether it would be good or bad, by just staying in the bliss. Faith and, in connection, bliss are representations of socialist humanism. Now, even though it is called socialist humanism, it is not really connected to socialism, the political ideology. They can be similar mindsets. Someone who is politically socialist may or may not be a socialist humanist, and vice versa. Someone who is a socialist humanist may or may not be politically socialist, but they are distinct. Socialist humanism is very much about equality, a focus on the group rather than the individual. What Faith is trying to do is absorb everyone into the same umbrella, the idea that everyone belongs and that everyone can be set free. And once you're in the bliss, everyone is equal. No one is lesser. The problems float away.
If everyone was the same, then they would just be Jane and the cult in King of the Hill. Because when you join the cult in King of the Hill, like, you automatically, your name is Jane.
Excuse me, are y'all with the cult?
We're not a cult. We're an organization that promotes love and...
Yeah, this is it.
Socialist humanism, like most ideologies, is, at its core, a very good thing. It is aiming to raise people up and make people find a sort of sense of belonging. You are never too far gone to be able to get happiness, to get salvation, to find love and see the world in a completely different light. However, bliss is a menace. It can literally and figuratively be a rejection of reality. Putting everyone under the same umbrella is good to raise people up, but not when it is dragging people down too, and just making everyone the same. If everyone is the same, no one can truly shine out and be different. What makes humanity so wonderful is the fact that each of us are different. We all have good parts and bad parts. Life has good parts and bad parts. That's what makes life interesting. That's what makes life worth living. The bad sucks, but that's why we fight for the good, and what we think is good, personally. Sometimes we have our faults, but that's why we can seek improvement. One mind, one viewpoint, one person cannot dictate where the bar should be, where we're all just the same, because they won't think of everything and all of people's good parts. Trying to raise people up is great, but making everyone equal will inevitably draw people down. People will be restricted because there's no such thing as the individual anymore. There's only bliss, only equality. And again, there's nothing exactly wrong with the fundamentals of socialist humanism. It's important to raise your fellow human being up and want them to grow and develop into the best that they can be. But trying to set a standard that everyone should at least reach is different than setting a bar where everyone is restricted to. Trying to make people exactly equal will only result in the loss of individuality, the loss of expression, and the loss of one's true self. Without them, you'd just be a zombie. Finally, John Seed, the Baptist, the Inquisitor. John is the head of indoctrination at Eden's Gate, which basically means teaching people about the cult and convincing people to join it. In most religions, this is supposed to be a relatively peaceful and welcoming process. Eden's Gate,
We'll take
not so much.
willingly.
This is a hell of a baptism though. Oh gosh, he's really good at him. Anyway, while John isn't the head of the cult, he certainly could be the face of it. He is charismatic, convincing, and careful. To get into his position of power, he needed to learn how to manipulate people and get what they want. And he learned how to do that the hard way. When he was growing up, he was adopted by another family, who, for some reason, was convinced that John's soul was tainted. Throughout his development, he was psychologically tortured by the family, forced to confess any and all sins.
They beat the devil out of
They
him.
beat the devil out of him.
I'm sorry, Bob Ross, I have sinned.
Shut up.
Shake off the excess and just beat the devil out of it.
John came to understand that even if he had nothing to hide, and even if he did nothing wrong, he would still be punished by his family, who demonized him. And so, he became skilled at disguising himself with what others wanted to see. As he became an adult, he would soon use these abilities of persuasion and manipulation to masquerade as this kind-hearted soul, all while making others reveal their secrets, and stomping all over them to get what he wants. He became educated as a lawyer, and to help the cult, he became very familiar with the county's legal systems. The cult pushed the boundaries of what they could do closer and closer before taking over the entire area. Just say yes. Through the cult's propaganda, John paints this lovely communal picture of the cult. The idea that we're all sinners, but that we can live past that together. We just have to join them. We just have to say yes. Sounds pretty okay, right?
No.
No. that just destroyed this moment. Because of his childhood, he's obsessed with sins and improvement. It is almost like he took what his quote-unquote family had done to him and is taking it out on the county. He is a sadist, and he is known for literally torturing people into figuring out what their sin is and then carving it into their body with a knife. This maddening, deep addiction for making things better is sick and insane, but we just have to make the choice to say yes, to be better, and that's where the problem comes in. John's seed represents liberal humanism. Again, just like socialist humanism, liberal humanism is not directly connected to being politically liberal. I'm not going into that again because I think you get it. Liberal humanism is similar to socialist humanism, but instead of a focus on making the overall group better, it is a focus on the individual.
Me.
Yes, you! Most people in first world capitalist countries fall under this mindset. The idea that every individual is unique among others and can better themselves. Everyone has the ability to reach their dreams or do what they can. People are individually strong and should be the master of their own destiny. Since the majority of people share this idea, it's a little hard to see the bad in it compared to some of the others. But that's why John is such a good representation, or maybe exaggeration, of liberal humanism. This brings about the illusion of choice. Bear in mind, this is a very depressing outlook of the universe. John tries to show that people can make the choice to be better, to just say yes and things will be better. However, the people of Hope County, whether they wish to join or not, will be forced into it anyway. Whether those people realize it or not, they are not making the choice of joining. And this is kind of similar to real life. I want to note again, this type of mindset is kind of a depressing one to have. Even if it's not entirely wrong, it's not entirely right either. You are affected by your environment. The people that surround you, the people who raise you and affect your development into adulthood, greatly shape your views, values, and ideologies. The idea of choice being an illusion suggests that you are not an individual making your own decisions because you are unique or something, but instead, you are making the choices based on the views of the people who shape you and surround you.
It's like nature versus nurture.
Yeah, in a similar way to that, yeah. Because if you were raised by your parents, you are bound to be similar to your parents. That's what this kind of mindset is. It views you as predestined to be similar to the people who shaped you. You are more or less considered to just be a demographic, not a person. In a way, it's kind of right. The people who influence you are likely going to influence your choices. But it's wrong to generalize and think that every single person in a group is going to act and think the same way as each other. If you think that choice is just an illusion, then liberal humanism and true individuality is a myth. In my opinion, people are forever surprising and complicated. They're twisted and spontaneous and, well, as part of their beauty as human beings. The only issue with liberal humanism is that individuals are focusing on themselves. The whole goal is to better oneself, and not the group. So, people don't have to care what happens to others as long as they, or people they care about, are getting what they want. This can lead to systems where people benefit themselves, or others, like them, more than others. It leads to different social classes where some are quote-unquote better off than others. Capitalist societies are built on liberal humanism. In a certain way, the individual can make or break themselves a lot by what they do, but this is where the illusion of choice comes in again. Sometimes your choices cannot change you no matter what you do. Two people can do the exact same thing and take the exact same paths, but still get different results. This can be affected by a variety of factors, and it just goes again into the idea that you suffer very little by letting others suffer. It's not like you're actively trying to make those people suffer, at least I hope not, but there's not as much of an incentive to help them. Some people, like John Seed, have found that manipulating people and stepping all over them actually allowed him to get exactly what he wanted. Power.
Wait, John Cena?
John Seed.
Oh.
I'm not. Yeah, John Cena manipulates people and steps all over them. I knew it. John may be a head of operations of the cult, but his obsessions with sinning and power seem to connect very little to what the cult actually wants. They stem more from his sadistic nature, and his goal to make people try to fix themselves falls a little flat because of his own views, methods, and subconsciously a quest for power. If we, in our capitalist societies, are supposed to make liberal humanism work, it's important to have a balance between the good of individuality and the good of some equality. Unfortunately, there's a lot of contradictions between the two, but that doesn't mean there can't be a compromise. Trying to make humanity better has its faults however you do it, so it's important to truly think and understand it. You're not going to change humanity yourself, but you do have a hand in how things will end up. Far Cry as a franchise has taught me many things, and its villains are some of the best in the industry. Far Cry 5's villains are definitely just as wicked as ever, but there is something very disturbing about them the more you look into them. Not necessarily that they have a point, or that they're devilishly convincing. Their goals are clear and good, but that doesn't justify their means. And it's the fact that, just like everyone, they fail at the big picture. They may be an exaggeration of what most people would do, but they are a reflection of us nonetheless. A reflection that is disturbingly, twistedly, beautifully human. Thank you all so much for watching. This is the Strafe, signing off.